17:35, we are live from the center of capital. This is Moscow Urban Forum. My name is Ksenia Chudinova. I'm the chief editor of Project Snob. We are on track of a successful town. Smart sustainability, how big data helps towns to adapt to the crisis. COVID-19 pandemic proved the efficiency of processing big data. How towns, countries and regions dealt with this, how they received this data, used it, and what regulations they have to use this data. We have a big session on this topic, and a lot of speakers will be talking. Let me introduce them. Dmitry Ivanov, the Deputy of Information Technology Department of Moscow, Andrew Salkin, co-founder of Resilient City Catalyst, Roberta Bachelan, Head of Unit Data Service, European Commission's Directorate General for Informatics, Fred Sidban, Microsoft Central and Eastern Europe Smart City Director, Deputy Mayor of Asnieres-sur-Seine, and Lola Zvirblis, Coordinator, Smart City Project, Ministry for Housing, Construction and Utilities of the Russian Federation. Let us start with Dmitry Ivanov. Dmitry, hello. Good evening. Good evening to you too. First, we would like to commend you on the large work of the Department of Moscow in the area of IT and digitalization, as well as automatization, providing digital passes to the citizens and other services. Please share with us how Moscow uses data in the work of administration, and what results of this work could you tell us about? Good evening once again. It is true that today we discuss about how data IT services helped town deal with pandemic, and we would like to note that during spring and autumn, MOSRU portal, which is the main digital platform, a main digital window for Moscow citizens, MOS.ru became an important tool for interaction between Moscow citizens and business with the Moscow authorities. And not only this platform, but other services that are a part of current IT infrastructure of Moscow. What else is important is IT infrastructure that has been developing for so many years, which includes so many services to provide services digitally for individuals and businesses as the center for processing data, a huge volume of information systems that deal with digitalization of certain industries of towns such as medicine, education, property management. And this is a global infrastructure which allowed us in short term to solve those goals and challenges that the city faced because of pandemic. As an example, in spring, when the situation unfolded, all electronic services allowed citizens during the times of restrictions to get the services without leaving home. And this was very important because these were daily services, for example, which involve use of car or regards family, and including services that provide different kind of support. And it is in time of restrictions, when it was hard or even impossible to go to certain center, buy food and get service. All these opportunities were provided to citizens digitally while staying at home. Moreover, the times of pandemic became a booster for use of such services. We see a lot of e-services that were not used as actively by citizens before. For example, cell services were used by citizens remotely. Some services would be used in traditional offline method. Nonetheless, the pandemic didn't leave any choice, so users got used to using the service online and kept using it online after lifting the restrictions. Plus, IT infrastructure of Moscow allowed citizens to stay in touch, to get information about health on time. I mean, they were able to make an appointment at the doctor's office and to get the results of tests thanks to electronic medical profile. Students were able to continue education with the digital systems of Moscow. As of now, more than 4 million online lessons have been held. There are a lot of daily services that let business and individuals get necessary services while staying at home. One of the recent examples is when IT service helped business to deal with pandemic and challenges. Well, the recent example of this is the system of QR codes and check-ins that Moscow citizens need to use when they go to a restaurant, for example. So this system allows a visitor to check in before entering a facility. And if sometime later it turns out that inside this facility there was someone who later tested positive for COVID, we can identify all possible contact visitors and notify them about this. So we would send them a message and they would know that they were in the risk zone and they should take care of their health, and in case of symptoms they should go to doctor immediately. So this system is an example of system that is actively used by citizens because the result is clear to them. So this allows citizens to go to different places, and on the other hand, it protects them, and they can swiftly learn if they were in a place where a sick person was. So in this case, they would be able to limit communication and stop the spread of the disease. On the other hand, this service allowed business to keep working, when different restrictions were being implemented. The system keeps functioning as advisory. So many places, upon their own initiative, receive QR code and arrange this check-in system. But we see that Moscow citizens are using the system actively, Moscow facilities are using the system actively too, and we hope that it will really help to maintain the balance. On the one hand, give an opportunity for people to learn about potential risks and danger and to prevent the spread of disease. On the other hand, it allows companies to keep working. So these were a few examples of city IT services that have been helping us in this complex situation. Dmitry, thank you very much. You touched on a very important topic, which is control over pandemic and maintaining privacy of citizens. We'll go back to this topic later. Thank you for being in line with schedule. Dear speakers, sorry for not reminding you. We have 6 minutes per speaker. And after this, we'll have Q&A session. I would like to invite Roberta Bucciolana, which is the head of Unit Data Services, European Commission's Directorate General for Informatics. The Commission actively provided support to EU towns to deal with pandemic, and we would like to learn what methods and approach you used in your work and what you recommended to European town in terms of methodology or as a guidance. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening to everybody. So indeed, let's say the European Commission is supporting a lot the digitalization of cities. And in this context of a pandemic, this proved to be quite useful because we were able to support different cities in handling with the amount of data that they were collecting. Very quickly, to give you an idea what we are doing, we have a special fund called the Connecting Europe Facilities that is providing instruments to support cities to become more digitalized. And this promotes on one side growth, jobs, competitiveness, and interconnection and interoperability. But this was particularly useful now during the current pandemic situation. So the support that we are providing is targeting technical support for the transition of the cities to become more digital, to develop secure and interoperable digital services that can be also reused by other cities, and also to be, let's say, contribute to more connected and digitalized Europe. That is one of the priority of the European Commission. And we do this through what we call building blocks. And the CEF building blocks, so the Connecting Europe Facility building blocks that we used in these particular cases are the big data test infrastructure and the contest broker. The first one allows you to exploit the power of data, and the second one is a system for collecting information from different sources associated to the cities, so sensors and different other input that we can receive. Now let's focus on the example that I want to present you. So in the context of the pandemic, we were in contact with different cities and we treated very different cases, in particular with the BDTI, so the big data test infrastructure. On one side, to get the information, on other sides, to analyze, for example, we had the federation of plasma analysis in different cities, or analyzing the articles on COVID and to find, let's say, solutions. But let's focus on what happened in Florence. So you know Florence, a very touristic city that was hit, let's say, in an important way by the crisis, the pandemic. And so we did an analysis, helped them to make an analysis based on the Wi-Fi usage, the public Wi-Fi usage of the city, the traffic and pollution sensors, the tickets sold for the museums and the events, and the city assets data map, that is a location of the relevant areas in the city. And using all this input, what we wanted to assess is what was the impact on, let's say, the population from the COVID, and also how to relaunch some services, in particular related to the tourism. And so what we did was inserting all these sources into the BDTI, so the big data test infrastructure, and using them to take decisions for the city on the basis, let's say, informed decisions on the basis of the data. And so it was a sort of predictive and descriptive analysis and a time series analysis that allowed the city of Florence to take real-time decisions and having quick KPIs, so key performance indicators on what was happening. And here you have an idea what happened. So if you see in the blue graph, the lockdown periods, it's very, very clear from the sensor information that came to the city, and you can see the difference between the pre and post lockdown. But also what is very interesting is the accommodation part, where you see clearly the input coming from the hotels and similar that clearly dropped during the compared to the previous year. So it's really a big impact for a touristic city like Florence. But what is interesting is also the other graph, the linear graph, where you can see that specific areas like the parks had sort of peaks when people was allowed to go out. So in substance, all this kind of information allowed the city of Florence to take target decisions to act towards the population and towards, let's say, the tourism and other activities. So this is a typical example of these building blocks facilities that we can offer in relation to the work done for facilitating the digitalization of the cities in Europe. Have a look to our website. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Спасибо вам большое. Спасибо,
Thank you very much.
мы остаемся еще в графике.
Thank you for being in timeline. I would like to invite Lola Zvirblis, who is responsible for Smart City project. This is a very ambitious project of Ministry for Housing of Russian Federation. It was created to make our towns smart, interesting, intensive, and with the infrastructure of data. I would like to understand how pandemic affected city management and development in towns, and what examples of effective use of data you could give to us today. Hello, everyone. I will tell you about my project, about the data, about how smart technology helped Russia to go through this crisis a little easier, and will share my screen with you right now. The Smart City project in Russia has been implemented for 2 years. It is on the interference of two projects, digital economy and comfortable housing. It is guided by the Ministry of Construction of Russia, and is basically focused on digitalization of the agriculture, and the whole world and Russia is currently dealing with the pandemic. So we have a question: how smart city technologies can help us fight with this, how our project can help us deal with it. I have to know that during self-isolation, well, it gave impetus for development of digital technologies in different towns, and we have just listened to Dmitry telling us about how it was happening in Moscow. And it actually happened in many towns of Russia. I would say in all of them. And we have been monitoring this situation. We have been following on how technologies change. Why was this a new impetus? Because a lot of things needed to be digitalized long time ago, and this is what we see happening now. Just technologies help us to do it in real life mode, to interact with citizens and to deal with current issues. Digital technologies that are used in scope of the project help us deal with coronavirus, because smart city is primarily safe city, which is safe for life, health, movement, and now we see the virus, which is also about threat. So safety of a person is the most important that we need to ensure with the technology of smart city. We can hear you. Can you hear us? Yes, I can hear you. Is my screen being shared? Not yet. Oh, it wasn't shared before. Please continue. We can see your screen.
И демонстрировался. Все хорошо.
We have analyzed what areas were touched by the virus. Smart city has architecture. Well, to realize any service, you need to provide infrastructure for the functioning of smart cities. It is necessary to think through the logic of smart cities. Well, everything changed. Services changed, priorities changed, and technologies changed. Even those that the town uses regularly. And now, in the context of a pandemic, we recommend the following to the cities. No technology will have unless citizens are aware of the real threat of the virus. That is why we recommend using all technologies to inform citizens about the virus. For these, more screens could be used. They could tell citizens about the consequences and threats of virus. So people will start using protective equipment and avoid crowded places. Well, we know how many screens there are in town. It's just that we recommend using them. This is normal technology. Next, we ask to implement technologies that target a decrease of interaction with cities. So people should start using remote ways of contacting with services. This is what Dmitry was talking about. And we don't mind implementing control technologies that would help to abide with the restrictions introduced in town. However, this is the list. However, this one provides the least assistance. For example, if you look at the self-isolation map of Yandex that allow to assess how citizens abide with the restrictions and with lockdown, so we could see the ranking of the regions in terms of lockdown. Smart city, which is being implemented in Russia, it affects urban environment, safety of city, well-being of people, and about investment climate. And virus affected all of this. And I would say that the urban environment was affected most by it. For example, smart utility services. Here, they were made special chatbots to pay for utilities. Well, this is not a know-how for Moscow, but in a lot of places, people still need to pay by going to a bank to pay for the services. And in some parts, the town was still working on green areas. In some places, voting was happening in digital format on certain environmental issues. And on 13th of May, the platform for citizens of a town were also implemented, and State Duma approved a project for this.
Or otherwise, we have seen how they've disconnected or reconnected the buttons to change the traffic lights, red to yellow to green. So they made it automatic so that people wouldn't have to use their hands to push the buttons. Cities of Kazan, Kaliningrad, Ulan-Ude. I don't know how it worked in Moscow, but what we had in Moscow, the buttons in public transportation, in the buses and trains have been disconnected, or there you have contactless car refueling, many other cases of eliminating physical contacts. QR codes, video surveillance, all the other applications are widely used to avoid physical contact. As for the digital urban management, there are some improvements in management. A lot of examples of giving up live queuing, live lines. So it's electronic queuing now, not only Moscow but many other cities, or platforms and channels for complaints. So next year it will be spread all over the country, not only Moscow. So all that will have one single registration password. I'll have to admit something. The investment climate. A lot of small companies have started their startups, have started active promotions. Like you've seen Yandex deliver guys using their bikes on white squares. That was a nice video we saw yesterday. So information technology and communicating messages is another area where you can use technology breakthroughs just to improve efficiency. There are many other auxiliary and support technologies to improve physical counteraction with the cities. Switching off the buttons is one of them. How much do I have? Not even 1 minute. You used up all of your time, but thank you. Stay with us. We do have some questions, and it seems like we'll go to Q&A section. We're going to invite Andrew Salkin, the co-founder of Resilient City Catalyst company, and that is an entity that is actively dealing with cities' sustainability and resiliency against different destruction factors of both nature and human nature destruction. So it will be interesting to discuss some trends in sustainability and resilience, and what particular techniques have you discovered in this tragic year of 2020, the pandemic year, and what is the contribution of the private sector, private companies in providing this sustainability and resilience of the cities? Andrew, you're welcome.
Glad to see you.
Very nice to see you.
It's great to be here. Thank you for the invitation. And I'm sharing my presentation. And I hope everyone can see it. First, the work that cities are doing around the world and the work of my fellow panelists is truly impressive, and the ability to manage this pandemic and help make cities places that aren't just being healthy, but also starting to return and thrive is really critical. And what I wanted to share today is a little bit of using the concept of resilience to help think about how cities can take lessons learned from the COVID events and begin applying that to how they recover and also become different cities and transform. So at Resilient Cities Catalyst, we work with cities on understanding their need for resilience. And it really starts at a high level and recognizing that there's exposure to natural disasters, that there's growing inequalities in different ways that these impacts are playing out in cities, recognizing that our infrastructure is not able to support what cities needed to do. And so we need to upgrade and improve the infrastructure so we can live in the 21st century the way we want. And more, we're starting to recognize how connected we really are. And forums like this really show us that cities around the world are experiencing the same challenges and using the same methodologies to solve that. But then there's things like COVID, which have really not only shown that the world is connected, but that the systems within cities are tied to each other. And if you pull one too hard, you could see cascading effects that begin to impact everything. So thinking about data and how data plays out in resilience, it's important to think about where you're trying to go with this concept of resilience. And for us, it's thinking about the systems within a city to not just survive and adapt, which is what we've been talking about a lot today, is how do you survive and adapt given COVID? But what we also want cities to think about is thriving. And to help cities do that, we spend a lot of time thinking about shocks and stresses. And these shocks are very obvious. These are those types of things that happen, like big events and floods and earthquakes and fires. And they're the kind of things like a pandemic. And when you start thinking about the data that you need to begin tracking and recovering, it has to think about these types of topics, plus many more. But more importantly, it's these stresses that we need to bring to the forefront, those things that happen every day in our cities that need to be monitored and tracked. And as you heard in examples from Moscow and working with the EU and the Smart Cities program across Russia, is the work here is really beginning to elevate how citizens and government are working day to day on the normal business normal business of living in a city. And a lot of this plays out in stresses. And so thinking about these shocks and stresses and how they come together is critical for leveraging and understanding data. And a couple lessons that I think are worth sharing and things that we've realized both before COVID and through COVID is about the importance of data and how it plays out in helping a city manage. One of the things that has been truly amazing, and the examples from Florence and the examples in Moscow and smart cities prove that, is there's new data that's becoming available. And this data is tremendously helpful. And for one of the very first times that I can see is private data outside government is being brought into government, and government is able to use that data effectively to track what the impacts have been for COVID. And here are some good examples in New York City. They're using the data that's in Track to Recovery, which is out of Harvard University. Google is providing open forums on their mobility. Yelp, which is a restaurant app, is helping the cities understand who's using restaurants and when they're closed and open. And MasterCard, of course, is sharing data about who's using credit cards. And this data is extremely important in understanding how COVID has impacted the city. But what's more important is beginning to think about how do you leverage this data to change how you begin to, how your city operates beyond COVID and where it needs to go. So not just how do you open up the city, but where does the transportation need to now happen given where the new jobs are going to be, where people are living. In order for this to happen, you actually need to have the data that you can use. And one of the problems that have existed, and it was really great to hear Roberto and the EU working with cities to build that capacity. A lot of the big data that we're talking about is just too big for government to use, or the technical capacities and tools just don't exist within the civil service systems in the bureaucracy. And often what you're also seeing is one agency might own data and the other agency might need that. One of the things that New York experienced is they needed to bring food to seniors, but they didn't have a good idea where the seniors were, except that information was in the tax department. So linking agencies together can be really critical. But in order to use the data, you need to have the data. And often procurement barriers and funding barriers really prevent cities from using that information. And if you can begin to think about all the work that has been done to create new data sources or change the way procurement is used during COVID, this is a great opportunity to take those lessons and continue them forward and really think about bringing that data in and making sure you have the resources available to keep the data readily available for government employees. And finally, you have to think about security and you have to understand the privacy data and setting up global privacy rules so that all data can follow common protocols will help the use of data across multiple platforms, both inside government and outside government, that will begin to unlock the capacity of government and others to use data, not just to manage COVID, but really to begin to plan for the future beyond COVID, which we all feel hopeful is going to be very soon. Thank you for that, and I look forward to the conversation.
Спасибо большое, спасибо, очень интересное.
Thank you so much. It was an interesting speech. Now I'd like to invite Fred Sidborn, a great speaker, and the fact that he manages to combine his performance in Microsoft and acting as a vice mayor of Agnières-sur-Seine, a city in France. So please tell us, how do you manage to combine the two jobs, and what are the benefits of that for your performance, and what specific IT solutions have been implemented in the city that you helped supervise, and what can you respectively boast of in your developments or methodology or new solutions or applications? Thank you so much.
Не включен микрофон у нашего.
Please activate your mic. Reconnect your mic, please. We'll have people tell the speaker. But please note, when we discuss the use of big data,
Yes.
practically.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, of course.
Yes?
Glad to hear
Okay, perfect. So thank you very much. Yes, indeed. It's a great pleasure for me to be here. I have indeed a unique experience as I work at Microsoft for 22 years now for Eastern Europe countries, including Russia. So outside of France, as in France, I'm not Microsoft at all. I have been elected indeed deputy mayor for 6 years ago of a town which is the third biggest town of the Hauts-de-Seine department called Agnières-sur-Seine. So the city, with around 100,000 citizens, is just next to Paris. And this is a town of one of Louis Vuitton manufacturing, for example, at 5 minutes from Paris Saint-Lazare or Paris La Défense, the famous big financial center of France. So I don't decide about what kind of technology is taken in my city, but I have, of course, the vision about what we need, and I'm very happy to see that Microsoft has won in a lot of solutions we did, as it was the best solution proposed with Microsoft Azure, Power BI, Business Intelligence, Microsoft Teams, Office 365, or artificial intelligence. So I've got a few slides to show you. First of all, we have put the citizen services as the center of the vision, as the technology protects the citizens thanks to CCTV, and we have a lot of solutions with artificial intelligence and for the COVID also with that, but also brings to the people all the services they need. So we have smartphone application, which allows citizens to report an issues we can resolve very easily to increase also the citizen satisfaction, very important for the mayor and myself, or waste management solution, for example. So it's very, very successful at this time, but we also develop sensor in the all cities. And for COVID, it has been very, very helpful about that. So with the COVID, we profit with all the, for example, the lighting system. So we have 5,700 lighting points changed to LED, so minus 40% of energy saving cities. But a different part were connected sensor with Azure and Power BI for big data. And so it allows us to have a dashboard with, of course, pollutions, air, quality of air, humidity, and so on, but also big data per streets and COVID-19 dashboard with predictive data with machine learning. And so in this example, for example, you can see that during the lockdown, the account of different people were not the same, of course. We, thanks to the sensors, we could understand how people were moving. And with machine learning, we could prevent the future flow of our citizens. And we see that which decision we can take thanks to all of this. So we can see how many trucks we have, how many four wheels we have, how many bicycles we have, and so on. So very, very, it was a very big need for us. And in transportation, we have also cars, of course, but also bicycle. And we have seen that during the COVID, we had different transportation, but a lot of people took the bicycle. So we needed to see where to invest, which road to invest. And so we put sensor of got for that with artificial intelligence also. So we put counters on it. And so in a different street, we will be able to see that, for example, in the different streets, we have no bicycle. Vélo is bicycle in French, so it's in French. But in different streets, we have more than 10,000 bicycles. So it is where we have to invest. So the sensor in Azure allows us to take decision to invest, to make investments in different streets. And so we have in Agnières-sur-Seine, Vélib Métropole. So Vélib is a part of the big Paris capital rent bicycle, and Anya is part of that program. And you can rent a bicycle thanks to the Velib, and all data are used on Microsoft Power BI for us to analyze the situation and to check about issues and investments to make. So I connect to Power BI. I see in my city how many bicycles have been tested by months, per days, what kind of subscription have been made, and at the end, I've got really a vision about what's going on. For example, we had a strike in transport at the beginning of 2020, so we could see the number of bicycles has been rent. And into the first lockdown in France, we have seen that, for example, the electric Velib has been made better than the standard Velib. So we decided to invest more on electric bicycle. At the end, COVID is not the only big data. It is also about people, communication, and collaboration between cities. And Microsoft Teams is used in all Moscow schools right now. And Anya has the same ideas about that, because Microsoft Teams allows us to collaborate between different people, different municipalities, and different students. So first, we made some exchange between London and Agnières, and with students we play chess because we love playing chess. So we connect on Microsoft Teams to exchange the cultures, the game about chess because it's international language. Then we put Office 365 in all schools of the cities with Microsoft Teams, and at the end, we made some events because we love Russia in Agnières-sur-Seine, so we invited Anatoly Karpov to play chess with us, with children. So TV was here, all children was here, and it was allowed to collaborate with Microsoft Teams. And at the end, we used this technology to make a digital twins with the city of Berlin, and it was a successful part. And we hope, of course, to be able to test this also with the city of Moscow. But you can see that all the technology has been very successful from the COVID, but also to the all global cities for the citizen, which is the key of our vision for the citizen satisfaction. Thank you.
Спасибо большое. Я хочу обратить внимание,
Thank you so much. And please note that together with us today, we have people who are following this big court trial ongoing with the Facebook network founder. And so far, the court proceedings are still going on. We're talking about Mark Zuckerberg, and there's a blatant amount of fine paid by Google for storing personal data, just big data. So whenever we talk about big data, we'll be facing fears of citizens, end users, consumers, that are concerned with losing their personal data. So I would like to ask every one of the speakers today, supposing, and this is actually a fact of life today, supposing we are building smart cities based on end-user data, using AI, selecting certain technology solutions for us. So who is, in your opinion, who is the end responsible entity or person to take decisions? How will the city look like? How will the city be built based on the recommendations of AI? We'll take turns here. Dmitry, we'll start with you, if you don't mind. That's a good question. I think we could take a long time discoursing on that. There are capabilities with AI and big data. There's a potential with that can bring us to new possibilities. And the main beneficiary here, the interested party, setting up the demand here is actually the citizen, the end user, the person, the individual. So we've been working for a long while so that all the services and capabilities that we are establishing, they should be customer-oriented, user-oriented. So it should be comfortable both for the user and the government. So it's not the speed or the quality of the technology, of the services should be the key emphasis. It should be the end-user experience that should be the cornerstone here. So the convenience of the end user is a main criterion here. Andrew Salkin, please, what do you think of that?
I think I agree with Dmitry that this is a very hard question, and it's an important question. And one thing that I think about is how impressive the AI has been in helping these big companies, like you mentioned, Facebook, use a lot of data to make a lot of money. And I think if we could take that same energy and apply it to making the cities and the places where people live and government investments better, it would go a long way. The question is, how do you do that? And I think the example of that was shared earlier in Moscow and smart cities of getting rid of lines so people don't have to wait in line, they can have electric queue is great. And then I think about how can AI begin to help citizens get the services they deserve or they're qualified for, and help get rid of not only lines, but start helping citizens not have to wait and apply. And I think this is a very interesting question, but it starts to, again, get over that line of who's making the decisions and how do you do that. And I think thinking about strong governance where the values of the people and the values of the citizens is applied to that AI is going to be very critical.
Спасибо большое. Спасибо, Роберт. Хотелось бы спросить Роберта.
Thank you so much. And Robert, please, your turn. Please tell us, what do you think of that?
Yes. So clearly, let's say big data and artificial intelligence are there to help taking decision, to have informed decisions. And then in the end, the decision is up to either the policymaker or the, let's say, the responsible authorities in the cities. So what we have to have clearly in mind is that one thing is collecting all the necessary information, and the other thing is, let's say, taking decision. What is extremely important for us in the European Union is, for example, if we use artificial intelligence to understand how this artificial intelligence is producing a certain suggestions or results. And this is the reason for which we are really pushing the idea of having an ethical approach to artificial intelligence that allows you to well understand what is behind and how this is helping you to take the final decision. Typical example is what we have also, let's say, in the European policies. We are collecting data from all Europe to take decisions, but then it's a political master that take the decision, having in mind not only the data part, but also, let's say, the considerations that are more of policy nature or political nature. So good to have big data. This facilitates, but to be treated with cautiousness.
Thank you again. Thank you so much. And Lyolia, what is your opinion, please? How could the processes be improved and optimized, this big data? In fact, I'll be more specific here with my question. What do you think? How far are we at this time from a general convention or a charter which should be common and universal for the humankind to regulate our relationship with AI? Well, it seems we're not far from that. We're actually very close. Well, as it was rightly articulated by Roberto, decisions will be taken by politicians, high-ranking individuals. But so far, the algorithms, the AI, are not smart enough, and specifically in Russia, we keep taking decisions based on insufficient volume of data. So far, the AI has not overridden human decisions. It's an assistant, yes. So I will support Dmitry and Roberto by saying this is an issue of democratization, bringing it to large groups of people. So you cannot say that it's this particular mayor's fault, on this particular road helped to drive through for 1,000 cyclists. So thank you, architect Mr. Johnson. Or when there was a road accident on a different road, again, this is the fault of the same architect or road designer. Or was it the fault of the team of the urban city designers? So it should be responsibility of a group of people. So any decision taken should have a responsibility behind it, well-based, well-grounded responsibility. So this new profession, new trade of future skills, there's a new profession around called a checking algorithm for ethic principles. Just remember that story about an algorithm with an AI that was judging people and taking decisions based on the color of your skin. That was strange. So algorithms that are used for training, and they could be unethical in training people. So there's new profession around, new trade around, judging AI for ethic principles. So there'll be a closing word. What do you think? You are the last one remaining. What do you think about democratization of processes? And that includes ethic things. And we're talking about urban development and big data handling.
Yes, again, it will be my close word because, as a deputy mayor, I will say, mayor and deputy mayor take decision. It's not AI. So, of course, AI will take care about, lots of data and will allow us, I was very agree with Roberto, to help us to see what the prediction will be, and this data we should have will also use. We will be able to use this data to optimize our decision. But the first decision we make is linked to our vision, our actions we want, and we will ask AI to go to specific things to see what's going in the futures. But it will not, because of that AI will take the decision. We will take the decision. And so lots of technology like, for example, machine learning will also help to optimize all politicians, for example, for the budget, for the data we have to take the good decision, the best decision to optimize, all action we can make for the citizen.
Thank you so much. And I would like to cordially thank all of our today's speakers. We had Dmitry Ivanov, Deputy Department Chief for IT Technologies of the City of Moscow, and Andrew Salkin, the co-founder of Resilient City Catalyst. We had Roberto Barcelona, the Chief of Division for Digital Services, the General Directorate of the European Commission for Medics. We also had Fred Sidbon, Microsoft Director for Solutions for Smart Cities for Central Eastern Europe, and Vice-Mayor of the city of Angers-sur-Seine. And Leola Shvirbis, the Supervisor of the project within Ministry of Construction of Russia, Smart City. And please stay with us.